and over the moon.
Welcome to the Landing Strip with Nick Lynham and Mikey Garcia, presented by From Financial.
Welcome back to the Landing Strip on 420 on a beautiful afternoon/evening in Winnipeg. Spring is here. There is no whiteouts, but we do get press conferences from the lead decision makers of the Winnipeg Jets. I hope you took a little hoot if you're into that and you're able to chill out and relax, because this organization loves to drive its fan base crazy, and today was no different. Lots to talk about, lots to read into. Mikey, how are you doing?
Oh man, today was a hoot. It was definitely a hoot. It definitely sounded like maybe Chevy hit the wacky tobacco beforehand, because there were a whole lot of words, but not a whole lot being said. It felt like at certain points. So I'm excited to go over all of this and enjoy this beautiful day.
And let's get into it. So what we're planning on doing today, phone lines will be open for the second half of the show. If you got some thoughts you want to get off your chest today, they will be open, and we'll take calls and comments until there is no more to take. But we're going to dive into this in what was a press conference that Choices TK says over on Twitch might have nailed this takeaway. Choices TK says, I didn't hear anything that gives me confidence. Only raises more questions and potential problems. Let's get into it. Do you want to start with Scott Arniel, Kevin Cheveldayoff, your general thoughts leaving it? Where do you want to start, Mikey? I'll let you kind of take this away.
Yeah. So we're going to get into all of the specifics of what they said and, how we think it relates to certain players, to the coaching, to all of that, the long term, the short term, the medium term. The thing that kind of really struck me, though, and left me more concerned coming out of today, is that it really shows that they continue to miss the mark when it comes to understanding the situation that they're really in. Mm-hmm. We'll get into how Arniel talked about, hopefully in the future he never has to break up 55 and 81, because hockey's all about duos and he likes that duo. And we're going to get into Chevy talking about young players coming into the lineup and how they need to buy in and fit into the structure that we need to be successful. We're going to talk about how, what he thinks made them successful in his mind is that defensive structure, that mindset, and how we're able to do that in years past. And he's confident we're going to do that moving forward, because he tells us that this group can still be successful running that structure. He believes in them. He told us that what made them successful going back was the defense, and how we had 2 back-to-back Jennings trophies. Both of them talked about 2 back-to-back Jennings trophies. I counted 3 times each. They were adamant to remind all of us for that the past 2 seasons. These guys, they knew how to do it. All of that continues to show me that they still have this absolute extreme rigidity in their thinking and in the team's process. You can't break up 55 and 81 because you like that duo. And even if the reason he likes it is that he doesn't want a pissed off Mark Scheifele locking him out of another room. Who cares if the team isn't winning? Who cares if we can't find new duos if we break them up? That's not the plan. Their role is to play together, so they have to, period. We have to get back to playing the old defense, like Chevy said, even though we don't have that personnel to play that way, and he's 100% responsible for that. The young players have to buy in and fit the structure, or they get cast out. They may never get another opportunity, according to Chevy, but we don't want to make a scorer into a grinder. No, we don't do that here. Again, it shows us if you don't fit in their narrow role, your fate is to get cast out with no promise of that another opportunity, which ironically proves the players who have said that there's no path to the Jets roster right. He told us that by saying it. Hellebuyck tells us, you can't expect to make no changes and then start competing for a cup tomorrow. And then Chevy and Arneal tell us that this core is good enough to win. Not only are they good enough to win, that the outer band of players are still good enough to compete for a championship.
If not better than 17-18?
Better than 17-18. So either they don't understand the situation or they just won't admit to those mistakes. Neither one looks good. right? They're unintentionally confirming the most damning criticisms that are coming from inside the organization, from the players and the prospects themselves. They're confirming it, the coach and the GM. This isn't a one-off. This isn't an aberration in an otherwise productive system. This is a fundamental flaw in the building blocks, and you can patch those cracks over and over, but you can't build a stable winner on top of it. And that's what I came out of today.
Yeah, I came out of it today asking, how many GMs that have had a 15-year resume, 15-year resume, has their bragging point as 2 William Jennings awards that you got to flaunt after this season? You know what I enjoyed about this press conference, if I'm being honest? You wanna bask in it a little bit?
Yes, I do.
The dysfunction of the Winnipeg Jets is in full display when you look at what's being said by the players, the coaching staff, and the front office. And mostly of that, the front office. If there is still a Kevin Cheveldayoff believer in this market, let's have a conversation, because I'd like you to enter reality.
Truly.
In my opinion, we got some real honesty and reflection from one of the leaders of the Winnipeg Jets franchise, and we got the usual word salad mindset. You know how the Winnipeg Jets are going to win a cup? Mindset. Defense is a mindset. Making the playoffs might as well be a mindset then, if that's what we're looking at. And at the end of the day, if you just believe and hope enough, winning the Stanley Cup is just simply a mindset. Scott Arniel started the day off. Let's start with Scott Arniel. And I imagine this might be a fun segment. Maybe gets a little heated. Mikey, your interpretation, what is your takeaway of Scott Arniel's thoughts on what went wrong this year, what he could do better, what he was taking ownership of, and did he take some shots at management and his dressing room today?
Well, if you ask Scott Arniel, no, he did not take any shots. He went out of his way many times to, let everybody know. And hey, I'm not taking a shot at them here. I'm not taking, this is not a shot at management, as he then proceeds to absolutely take a shot at them. Look, whether you mean it in a negative way or not, Scott, those things that you're saying are indictments against your management group. Whether you say them with a smile on your face and love in your heart, it's still a failure on your management group not to be able to give you the team that, you say that you can only coach what's in front of you. You want to play 100 miles an hour, but you can only coach what's in front of you. Like there's really no other way to read that outside of he didn't give me the players that I need to run my system. Right? Scott as well, he was the one that spoke first today and brought up the Jennings multiple times, bringing it up in the context of, hey, look, when we had the horses to go, we're able to run a system where we were giving up, the least amount in the league over those 2 years. That's a real big plus. But, this year, yeah, for better or for worse, we got, bigger and stronger. And, maybe that wasn't, maybe that was good, maybe that wasn't. But, you can only coach what's in front of you. There is no way to read that is not an indictment of the players that are, sitting there not being able to run the system that you want to run. That is just it. So yeah, that I do. There was a few things that Scott Arniel said that I did like, right? So I did like that because it does put the spotlight right back on the management group that put that roster together. He talked about how the first 30 games, even with the 9-2 or whatever it was start, the analytics weren't good. Even their internal analytics said this was not good, even if the wins looked good on paper. So when we were going, hey guys, the other winning games, but this isn't really the right way to do it, and they're not going to be able to sustain this, they were seeing that as well. So I'm glad that at least was also getting through right to them, that their internal numbers were showing that. When they talked about the 11-game losing streak is where we got into the, 1-goal games is what caused it. 1-goal games is why we lost, the 11 games, why we had only whatever it was, 6 wins in the middle 30 there. Why we had, the whole poor thing. And they're going to need time to figure that out. They're going to need time to reflect and look back and, run the numbers and see why they were not good in 1-goal games. even though he's already said it. It's the personnel. You can only coach what's in front of you. The team that they had was not built to go out and win a, tightly contested 1-goal game, digging it out for the entire 60 minutes. They don't have the quote unquote horses, like Scott Arniel likes to say, to do those things. That's why so many of them went against them this year. So it's I don't know if they need 4.5 months to go back and figure it out. Like Scott said, anytime that they asked him a question he didn't want to answer, which was quite a few of them, I know he's going to get a lot of credit for being, I think, transparent and things like that. A lot of what I heard today from Scott Arniel was, you know what, I don't know. We're going to have to talk about that and look at it over the next, 4.5 months. And, we'll talk about it then. Yeah, we're going to have to go back and look at other teams and, we'll talk about it then. Yeah, we're going to have to meet with some more staff and we'll talk about it then. Yeah, I'm really going to look at, myself, and I'm really going to look at the numbers, and I'm going to watch all these games, and I'm going to figure out what's happening. But, I can't tell you anything right now, When they asked him what the players thought, because he let us know, hey, the players let me know in the exit interviews what they thought of my performance. And he was asked, about that. What were some of the things they kind of said to you? Well, that's only between us. We really got to, take that away from us. We can't talk about that here. There was never an answer to anything he was slightly uncomfortable with. The only time we got really anything from Scott Arniel was when it was a clear shot at management for not getting him the players that he needed, or the players not being able to run the system that he wanted to run. To quote Scott Arniel, I never lose. I only win or learn.
So, yeah, we definitely had different takeaways in this, where Victoria says, honestly, Arniel's interview was 10 times better than Chevy's.
Yes,
and Rihanna
agreed.
pointed out, Arnie will never, ever separate 55 and 81, and now we officially have that final nail in the comment. We'll get into that comment. My takeaway watching Scott Arniel is I actually don't know what people expected him to say more at this point of the offseason than what he did. I actually thought we saw a very honest, truthful guy that, for one, started off his press conference putting himself a bit on the, would the word be, on the plank and in danger by publicly saying where he feels he needs to take accountability for right off the bat. I think he nails things when he talks about and tells us the process that they were going through behind the scenes on. They were looking at last year's success, and he was in those meetings when they were trying to get certain players, and the organization had felt it was important to build off of that good team with veterans that could help them take the next step. Clearly a problem. I think we could diagnose some of his comments and disagree with some of them, but I do think from a press conference standpoint, this might have been, and we've talked about it, my biggest question for me personally, I'm probably going to be the bigger Scott Arniel backer on the show today, but my one big criticism this year for him, outside of the lack of creativity when this team hit the bottom, was he didn't come off to me as a coach that is confident in himself to conduct post-game interviews. And we saw Hammer actually ask a question on that and how he had felt down the stretch watching him. He had felt beat up. The emotions were going, and it was clear on display. And we heard Arniel get into that a little bit. I actually thought, personally, this was one of Scott Arniel's most impressive media availabilities since coming to Winnipeg. I don't think it's been a strength, but I thought we saw a man, and we could diagnose and get into the details of the conversation, but I think he gave us a bigger peek behind the curtain, as things tend to happen when you're on a losing team. And the biggest notable one for me was, again, you hear Scott Arniel talk about not having the personnel to run this system and how he'd love to be a 1,000 mile per hour team and believes that is a way to win in a league that has gotten younger and quicker. I believe we saw two things from Scott Arniel. I thought we saw a man that was working through this still. And the fact that he's going to spend 4 months trying to figure this out, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I'd be kind of pissed off if he thought he had all the answers today in the vein that Kevin Cheveldayoff still believes he has all the answers in-house here. I thought we saw a real introspective Scott Arniel, who knows there's got to be a lot of homework on his half, who's willing to acknowledge where he got things wrong, who's really ready to break down his own performance and was accountable to it. And I think we saw that version, but I also think we saw Scott Arniel in job preservation mode a little bit there, where the 81-55 conversation comes to mind for me, because you know my theory on this entire conversation. Yes. And where I believe that goes, I think that was job preservation mode. I think some of the Hellebuck conversation was job preservation mode. But I did actually respect how Scott Arniel went about this.
So I want to a couple of spots. One, I agree 100% with everybody.
Quick question for you.
Yep.
Can you open the phone lines? We're going to have a little special guest call in quickly on this topic, because someone wants to fight me on this take.
Okay.
You'll recognize the voice.
Okay. Let me hold on. I'm just pulling up the phone lines.
We're going to have a special guest from the Jets media community to call in and have a little battle on this take. I'm excited to see where this goes. Let's have some fun tonight.
All right, let's get this open here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Phone lines are now open for them.
So call in from the WST team. Give us a call. Let's talk about it. While we wait for that, Matt Rothman says, my main issue with Arneal this season was him talking about how this team wasn't ready for games for many parts of the season, when it literally is a job to set this team up. Oh, I think we could break down Scott Arneal's performance. Don't worry, we'll get into that too.
All right, caller, you're on the landing strip.
Hey there, long-time listener, first-time caller. How's it going, fellas?
Good. How you doing, Liz?
Oh, I'm doing great. And I'm in the mood to fight, so.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, no, I think, look, obviously we all listen to those availabilities today, but I don't think that the comments from Scott Arniel about playing the lineup that's been put in front of him or whatever was a shot at management at all. The way I kind of perceived a lot of today in the conversations in and around this team for a really long time is that it's hard to build a team in Winnipeg, and I think everyone in and around this team has a little bit of a little bro complex when it comes to the city that we're operating in here. And I think that Scott Arniel really thinks that Kevin Cheveldayoff did his best. You know, Kevin Cheveldayoff made comments about, you know, the fact that trade calls were being made and they were getting blocked, and they were trying. And I think everybody believes that. And I think that it's probably true. And that sucks. But you still have to play in the National Hockey League. So I think that that's where the conversation lies a little bit more for me. And I think that everyone here does have a hard job, but it's still a job. So I don't know that Scott Arniel is upset with Kevin Cheveldayoff, but I think everyone is upset with the circumstance. And I feel like everyone's just kind of accepting of that circumstance. And so that's how I perceive that one. And I'm curious to know how you guys feel about that.
Okay, let's go back and forth here, Liz, because I think you're correct on how the org as a whole views this situation. I think that was definitely a vibe that came out of this. That being said, as soon as the players and Arneal, whether they want it to be a shot or not, as soon as everyone starts leaning on personnel, that is one man's job. At the end of the day,
correct.
Whether it's meant to be a shot or not, any of us dissecting what's going on here has to read into the fact that the players have said the same thing. Scott Arniel said the same way, even though he tried to hedge himself. The fact everyone's looking at player personnel falls on one person. As who clearly most
I
of this
won't disagree with you on that
about.
at all, but I just think that, you know, I think there are a lot of folks that are, you know, hoping that there's fire being ignited here and that there's pressure being applied and stuff. But I think that a lot of the decision makers that matter really do think that everyone tried their best and that's okay.
Well, Chevy sure said that too. With all I can do is try, and I got to pick myself up. I do believe there's a stink to this all. That you're right, that this is kind of like how they feel in this moment. But I do think at the core of this, I think the cracks are showing is the best way I would say this, between Arneal leaning towards speed and personnel, and Kevin Cheveldayoff not giving a resounding answer on Arneal's career. I read into that there is a bit of a fracture here, personally.
Yeah, no. And I think that that's fair because I think that at the end of the day, though, while I truly believe what I'm saying, the thing that I felt the strongest about this entire stretch here is that, you know, whether you're talking about the development of players or anything like that, the kind of variables that are at play in a team's record every single year are, you know, the schedule, their health, their personnel, their coaching, and their effort, right? And, you know, every single time someone in the media tried to put pressure on one of those variables and one of those points, okay, was it personnel issues? Like, hey, no, we liked our group. We liked the guys we had. We like our core. We believe in our core. If you're trying to poke on coaching, you know, all the players say that Arnie's great or whatever. Not that necessarily everything they're saying publicly to the media is always 100% reflective of how they truly feel, but the big one for me is the effort piece. And everyone's like, everyone tried their hardest. If every single one of those variables is fine, how are you 26th in the national right now? And I think that that's the biggest thing where they all know that. They all know that, you know, hope and belief is not a plan. And so I think that there are probably cracks and fractures going on that aren't going to get exposed to, you know, those of us publicly, and they're going to try and deal with that within, which is their right to do. But I think that a lot of conflicting ideas and principles and values and people kind of exist at once, and we only kind of get to glean a little bit of insight from it. So it's all super, super speculative, but I feel like a couple things are true at once, that everyone does feel like the circumstance really does suck, but they also know that eventually if this keeps going, which it's on the trajectory to do, players are going to start asking out, and then all of a sudden you're not going to have a hockey team anymore, right? So I think that there are a couple different things going on here, but it was definitely interesting to hear the little pokes and prods there.
Liz, love to hear from you. Thanks for calling in. If I bug you
Thanks
with another take, feel free to call right back, and we can make this a little joint show here today. But we will keep building off that because, as you know, Liz, we've been talking about this all weekend. I believe that first trade request is coming this summer, and I believe today actually made me feel better about that, if I'm being completely honest with everybody. And we'll get into that throughout the show.
Well, we'll see how that ages. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Liz. Mikey, back to you, because there were some holes you wanted to poke, I believe, in the Scott Arniel stuff.
Yeah, just real quick, and then we can get to some of the stuff that we were talking there with Liz as well. So yeah, with the Arnie, just going real back to the beginning there, that was such a good call. I totally agree with everybody who says that the Arnie presser was much better than the Chevy one, that we learned much more from that one versus the Chevy one. Totally agree. Not arguing that whatsoever. You know, grading on a curve, then yeah, absolutely, you know, much better. I just, the issue that I have with Arnie's presser is that you can be non-committal and kind of, you know, obstructive a bit with things that are in the past that you don't want to talk about. You know, you don't want to be telling stories out of the locker room. You're not going to say why this happened or that happened. I totally get that. My frustration comes from anytime he was asked a question about the future. That's where we got absolutely nothing, right? It was, you know, what did you learn instead of, you know, losing? Because he said, I don't, you know, we learn instead of lose. And instead of saying, you know, something that he's learned about what he's going to be doing, it's, well, I got knocked off the ladder. I got punched. I need to learn. I'm not the first coach that it's happened to. I'll reach out to other coaches. When he's asked about, I lost it now. I was too enthralled on the call. I lost my spot with all my stuff now because I was looking at
I'll touch on that one if you think about it.
Yeah, thank you.
So here's where I'm at.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. Okay, so on that topic there, I wouldn't want him to have those answers. I would want him calling around. I would want him diving into the best teams in the league and the new trends when evaluating this and where things went wrong. I just wouldn't expect answers quite yet from Scott Arniel after an 82-game season. Now, the other thing I will say, like,
I don't know.
Pairs into this point
to come out and
really
say, I've learned instead of learning.
Hold on. I got a point for you. That actually plays into your point.
Yep.
But as far as, like, future questions, we shouldn't have future answers yet. That would tell me that they did a butt-fuck job of analyzing this in 2 days and decided this was the best answer moving forward after 2 days. I think Chevy probably should have been more prepared after the Hellbuck stuff. But from a coaching standpoint, I wouldn't expect him to have those future answers yet. There is 4 months for him to get into that stuff, and I agree with him on that stuff. Like I said, I would be questioning him more
I
if
don't
he
know.
had
I guess
all these answers that he didn't unleash. But to play into your point, there was one answer that was concerning on Scott Arniel and Kevin Cheveldayoff on this idea of evaluating as you go. They talked about something along the lines of, now that the season's over, we could finally reevaluate what went wrong, what we have, what we didn't.
Yep.
The fact that there was not an ongoing reevaluation process when you fell to 32nd in the league and you still kept running out this failed project over and over until the trade deadline forced you to pivot is a problem as far as how they handle a regular season from game 1 to 82. It was clear that plan A was the only plan they were allowed to have until circumstances changed. So I think that plays into your point on preparation and evaluation. I just don't think there should be answers about the future of this group quite yet. And I'm not even sure he's going to be here after the Chevy not answer.
I guess, sorry, I'm doing a bad job of explaining myself today, so I apologize. I guess what I mean by futures. So they asked, at the beginning, what was one of the reasons for the rough start? Was it, so many new people coming in? His answer at the time was, I was spinning my wheels for so long trying to figure out what the new guys are good at. Right? Again, that's a problem. You're not able to identify the future portion of it, right? I was trying to figure out our group for 45 games, and it took till post-Olympics, is what he said as well. It was those type of things, right? It's we don't know what we have in front of us. We don't know what to do with it going forward. We only have this one plan. And anytime he was asked about that, I was so unsatisfied with the answers. Because like you said, there was no attempt at trying to right the ship during the year
100%.
Because they were still trying to figure out what they had for over half of it was where I got the frustration.
And I think that's totally fair. I think looking backwards and judging some of the stuff and taking some of Arneal's comments and then now using Arneal's perspective to look back and judge things, I think that's totally fair game. I just don't think expecting him to have answers about the next 4 months is what we're kind of looking for here. I think Scott Arniel did a very good job of letting us read through the lines and now look back at the work he did with the answers of why he got there.
Yeah.
And now we could judge his work of the last year better rather than the work moving forward is kind of where I would look at that.
Yeah, going forward is Chevy's time. Right now, it's less about Arnie in the future. We know more about Arniel, one, if he's going to be the head coach. Kevin Cheveldayoff was very non-committal about that, which we'll get into.
Yes.
And then, once we know if it's going to be him and what players he's going to be coaching, because you can only coach what's in front of you.
You can only coach what's in front of you. That is the line. Like, I think Liss has the right interpretation of how the org feels big picture.
Yep.
But in these pro sports, I know it got me and my coaching staff in some trouble when a buddy had loose lips on a bit of our team. And management wasn't thrilled with those loose lips. Those types of comments do put yourself a bit more in the firing squad, where we heard what I think was Scott Arniel take accountability for the problems that were his, while still pushing things out there that, hey, this wasn't all Scott Arniel. I'm not falling on this sword. There was real problems here. In comparison to Kevin Cheveldayoff, who's like, well, I believe in trying in this league, and trying's better than not trying. Yep. Maybe I could have, would have done things differently, but we tried. I think there was just a stark contrast where if I'm looking at this, I trust Scott Arniel to diagnose and get to the root of the problems in this org more than Kevin Cheveldayoff, and that's a problem. That is a real problem when you're looking at the levels of each job and how important they are moving forward.
It's like a horse babysitting a dog, right? It's the old John Mulaney joke. I agree with Liss 100% in that the organization most likely sees it as, this is a hard thing to do. We tried really hard. We got screwed by, X, Y, and Z thing that happened. And, everybody's doing their best and are all going to come back. And I kind of had talked about it even a little bit earlier. Just because he didn't mean it negatively doesn't mean that it's not a negative thing that he's saying. It's still an indictment against the management group because, like you said, right, whose job is it, one, to fill that roster out with players? It's Kevin Cheveldayoff. And also, part of that is making this a desirable place to play, right? Showing that if you're a player that, is going to produce, you can come here and play and, get opportunities on a top line if you're producing to like that. Well, unless you play the, left wing, because then that's not possible anymore. It's right. It's those type of things. Even those little things are still known, right? It's winning fixes a lot. And if the Jets are a consistent winner, that's going to make it a desirable place to play. But also, if you're a young player, are you really going to, be excited about getting drafted to Winnipeg when all you're hearing is, you can't make the roster without multiple injuries happening? And then a GM coming out and saying, yeah, if you don't fit our structure and buy in, yeah, you'll get an opportunity, but you might not get another one. You may flame out there. It's those aren't good things, even if they mean them in a good way. It's still an indictment, and it's still a shot at them, whether it's said with a smile or not.
Choices TK with some good takeaways on the conversation, saying Arniel is a custodian. If the team is turnkey, he can handle it. If it becomes difficult or requires innovation, he is in over his head. I think that's a perfectly fair way to describe him. I'm not going to throw myself on the sword for Scott Arniel. I just think there's a clear hierarchy of who I trust in this organization right now. And I actually trust Scott Arniel more than the general manager right now. Let's get into the big conversation, because obviously we've talked about this one a lot. People get annoyed with how much we talk about this one, but at the end of the day, this is the biggest conversation facing the Winnipeg Jets. When you look at what happened at the end of the Blake Wheeler time here and what babying people like that brought as far as locker room dysfunction, as far as teams being able to score and build depth, this conversation is big as far as the idea you can't have all your eggs in one basket. And it is the conversation about Yuri Curry and Wayne Gretzky. The Gretzky and Curry conversation came up today. And I thought Jeff Hamilton had a really interesting takeaway on this entire conversation on WST and why this is important. And this is something like we've hammered on. But I'm going to pull up Connor Habchak's tweets here with the actual quote.
And as you do that, remind people why you're calling Scheifele and Connor Gretzky and Curry.
I said it as a joke,
And then
3 or 4 days before Arneal made a comment. So it was kind of like, is Scotty Arneal listening and leaning into this shit? But I had called them Gretzky and Curry because this entire narrative was built up that the Winnipeg Jets could not win unless these two players were playing together. Where would all the goals go? Could you imagine if we lost by 2 instead of 1? Like, I just thought the entire conversation about why Curry and Gretzky have to stay together is one of the dumbest conversations. It's such a little Winnipeg conversation that this has to happen for 82 games. Not one pair of NHL hockey players played more minutes as a duo than these two. Not a single top pair in the NHL played more minutes together than this duo. This is a real issue. And then Scott Arniel, 3 or 4 days after I made the Curry and Gretzky comparison on this show, compared their work ethic and what they mean to each other like Yuri Curry and Wayne Gretzky, which is an insane comp. Yuri Curry was actually a good two-way winger that could score 50, 60 goals. That is not Kyle Connor. But on this conversation, Connor Habchak's tweet, NHL Jets head coach Scott Arniel was asked about playing 81 and 55 together more than any other forward duo or defense pair in the NHL this season. Long quote, I think your best players, it's twos. It works in twos. There's pairs that work and chemistry that happens, and then the third guy is always a piece that adds to it. And there's history that these guys have been elite in this league for the last few years. My kind of rationale of it was that I'm already having a tough time scoring goals. Now I'm going to take away the line that can actually give me a chance to stay in the game, win a game for us. Could I? Should I? Maybe. That's part of what I will look at. And then you know what? It might happen next year. I really, really hope it doesn't, but I don't know. What is your thoughts hearing Scott Arniel's rationale on Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, and what does it mean for the Winnipeg Jets moving forward?
Well, if you enjoy watching Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor play hockey together, you should be pretty happy, because that means they're going to be continuing to play hockey together as long as they are on the same roster. Is kind of what I took away from that. they are not going away from that duo. In terms of on-ice hockey reasons, we've speculated, over and over again that the, simplest answer, the one that they could give, is exactly that, right? They're the only ones that are going. They've got a great chemistry. Scott's actually kind of did say something I agree with. I also do think building your lines is about building it with duos, right? Finding 100%. Pairs on every single line that, can work together with what you're expecting out of that line, what you need out of that line. And then you try to find a complementary piece, with the other winger usually, right? It's not usually going to be two wingers, but you never know. So I do agree with him in that as a broad concept.
100%.
However, the issue becomes when you have no other duos that are anywhere near productive. You've got two star players, supposedly. You're supposed to be two Olympians, two of the top 25 players in the National Hockey League. You're supposed to have this great all-time duo that can't, they need all the minutes. So you would think in any other situation, again, take the names off the back of the jersey, that those guys, you would at least give it an opportunity, right? Give it a try. See if you can find another duo. Because if that works, all of a sudden you have two different duos that are really good and playing well together. I don't know. Two seems to be better than one. I'm not super great at math. I'm no, radio host. But anyways, it's a thing where you limit yourself so much. And it's frustrating because we talked about it when they were winning, going, hey, guys, this is a great time to give this a shot because you've got a nice big cushion. You're playing well with all of your other players. Like, we had 8 guys go off for career years in not the season that just finished, but the one prior. You had all of these options to play with, and no, can't touch it because you're winning. All right, fine. Flash forward to this season. Hey, the Jets are in 32nd place. They are not making the playoffs. This is a last place hockey team. Why don't we give it a shot? Let's see if it can spark something. No. They're losing. That's the only 2 that are scoring. You can't touch it. So it's not a real conversation. It's not a real discussion about what's happening on the ice. That's where I think the frustration brewed over this year, and it feels like that's going to be the situation again. As long as Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor are on the same roster next season, they will be staple gunned to each other's side again. It's frustrating because it limits you on the ice. I also think it limits Kevin Cheveldayoff's ability to make this an appealing market, because you've now taken away the option to say, hey, do you want to come play left wing with Mark Scheifele if you're a free agent? No, never mind. That's not happening. So, yeah, it's not good for the team. I don't think it's good for Scheifele and Connor, to be totally honest. It limits their perception, I think, also around the league. It might be one of the reasons why Mark Scheifele wasn't a part of Team Canada's plans, right? Knowing that he only likes to play with this one guy that is not going to be there with him, and he might not come across as the most, flexible, the most willing to, play in different positions and play off, up and down the lineup, because it's so very rigid. So I don't know. I just don't think it helps anybody whatsoever. But it doesn't sound like it's coming to an end anytime soon.
So I agree with him up until that these guys have been elite in this league for the last few years. Lines work in duos. The third piece is always trying to find that fit. I completely agree with that. He is 100% right on how building a lineup in the NHL to be successful works. You need 2 guys that positively drive play the other way, and you find a third piece that could play off of what those guys do. That is how you got to try and build a lineup in this league, and especially to spread the wealth. As far as being elite in this league for the last few years, it's just not accurate. It is not reality when you break this down by actual production in the minutes they're playing and comparing it to the rest of the league. They are more realistically, as a top-line duo, in the top 10 to 16, 18 range any given year than the top 5 or the top 2, where this organization seems to believe that they are. Because they see all these numbers, they see the back of the hockey card. Someone had mentioned in the show earlier that Scott Arniel played hockey 40 years ago. He's stuck in that. It is clear the Winnipeg Jets, as an organization, are stuck where their analysis of player performance comes from what you can get effectively on the back of a hockey card. But when you break this down, and we talked about this, it's one of the biggest reasons they have not won a road playoff game in 3 years.
Yep.
11-0 for the other teams on the road.
Yep.
Because they are not an elite duo. Mark Scheifele, I truly believe, despite where I think he falls on the pedestal of top centers, I think you could build a top 10 first line with the right pieces around Mark Scheifele and how he produces and creates offense. We all know his problem is he can't play defense, or he just doesn't commit to playing defense. When you pair that with another guy that fits the same mold, you get what the Winnipeg Jets got out of Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor this year. And it's one goal every 27 games ahead of their opponent and what they're giving up at 5-on-5.
Yep.
They were a -9 at 5-on-5. This elite Gretzky-Curry level duo. -9 when Josh Morrissey was not on the ice for them, which we know Josh Morrissey played the bulk of their minutes. And this is one of those ones where, again, I respect Scott Arniel, even though, again, I believe he's protecting both of those two and Chevy on this quote. Everyone knows what I think is really going on there. And it's the same thing that happened with Wheeler and Scheifele, and that's why this has to get figured out in a hurry. But let's even dive into his rationale and judge his rationale. My kind of rationale of it was that I'm already having a tough time scoring goals. Now I'm going to take away the one line that can actually give me a chance to stay in a game, to win a game for us, ? Could I? Should I? Maybe that's part of it. I will look at it. And then you know what? It might happen next year. I really, really hope it doesn't. I don't know. For one, if he truly believes that, he is behind the times on roster building of virtually every coach that is competitive at this point.
Yep.
If he believes that in his heart. Secondly, we saw this team, this idea they had one line going, brought them to 32nd out of 32nd in the entire National Hockey League, depending on Gretzky and Curry to win them hockey games. 32nd. It does not get lower. What the Winnipeg Jets have done all year and continue to do, and it's no longer conspiracy, is they are showing their whole ass out for all of us to see, judge, and get into. Because their whole ass is, at the end of the day, this is about Kevin Cheveldayoff's resume, putting up William Jennings awards now. This is about Mark Scheifele's resume of passing Howardchuk. This is about keeping Kyle Connor happy in Winnipeg. And this is about keeping Connor Hellebuyck happy. Everything else falls behind those priorities. What I heard today is an organization that continues to be scared, that operates in fear, that if they cross a line that might disturb the peace with their best players, it's an untouchable line for them. That is all I'm hearing from them. And I will say this again, and you know what? We said it July 2nd. I'll say it on 420 here today. If anyone listening wants to bet a degenerate like me, I will confidently bet based on what we heard from the Winnipeg Jets today, they will not make the playoffs tomorrow. Name your price in my DMs. I'll put money behind that.
You mean next year, not tomorrow?
Next year.
Yeah.
They're not interested. They're not interested in being serious about figuring this out. And that question guarantees it. Everything Kevin Cheveldayoff said, I'll bet against that man every single time for how I see where this league is versus how he does. There's what I'll put out there based on what we heard. I could not be happier leaving the Kevin Cheveldayoff stuff. Let's get right into Kevin Cheveldayoff. Here's the big one. You know what my big takeaway today, Mikey, was listening to Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Ooh, that you needed something on 420 after that?
Oh, I definitely did to chill out.
Geez.
What a waste of time that man is answering answers. The Winnipeg Jets, from a PR's perspective, would be much better off not ever having their general manager get in front of a microphone. How are you 15 years in and this pathetic? 15 years, exec. And we're hearing defense is a mindset. This is how we get back in it. We hear him suggest their core. So they look at their core in two ways. It's the big four, and then the secondary core is Neil Pionk. They confirmed to us today they think Neil Pionk's the number 2 defenseman on a contending team. Mm-hmm. I need to get their dealers. Clearly mine isn't giving me the good stuff. Velarde's in that secondary core. I guess Perfetti would probably be in that secondary core, and Adam Lowry's in that secondary core, and Dylan Sandberg's in that secondary core. Yeah. And we heard Kevin Cheveldayoff is so far away from reality of the situation we find ourselves, to the point he has deluded himself into believing the current group he has built as a core and secondary core is better than what got them to the Western Conference Finals. We heard that today, that he believes there is more in this core than what went to the Western Conference Finals. The best team we will ever see this dumbass put together. Stroke of luck for half of it. But he actually believes that. He said that out loud today. He is exposing his own ass. And you know what my biggest takeaway is I could not be happier. I tell you guys what I do here. You all know I've been a season ticket holder. I didn't renew for next year. And you know what I told my rep when they asked for a reason why and I emailed it in? No word of a lie. I'm not playing some let's get some clicks, let's talk about it. I sent an email saying I will not continue to spend thousands of dollars watching them drive this off a cliff. Watching something I genuinely love get driven off a cliff. I'm not funding that. I told them, keep my phone number, keep my email. If one of these two things happens this summer, I'll buy back in, no problem. No problem. If Kevin Cheveldayoff were to get fired, I'd buy the season tickets that day. No problem. Just out of pure spite that I don't have to listen to that man or watch that man ruin my hockey team again. Easy way. Never going to happen. No, it's never happening. Yep. That was on the list. Number 2, the Winnipeg Jets commit to rebuilding this and giving this team a future. I'll buy back in right away. I've said that before. Listening to Kevin Cheveldayoff today, I could not be happier with that decision. The guy that has his hands on the steering wheel in Winnipeg has no fucking clue. Has no clue. If there's a Chevy defender listening, please call in because I need to hear what you heard from this man that gives you faith in this. This is a country club ran out of Canada Life Center, headlined by a man who is scared of his own shadow to fire anybody and what that might mean, despite giving someone 15 years, $30 million plus in income over that span, who had never worked in the NHL before, by the way. And a fraud! Kevin Cheveldayoff is plainly a fraud. He has shown throughout this, he won't take accountability. He believes this is all some mythical mindset, like Santa Claus is going to get into these guys' heads and it's going to turn over. He believes what he has currently built is better than the best version we will ever see. We saw him again lean into well, we didn't know if our young guys were ready and we didn't want to throw them in that spot. Guess what? You are telling us you had no evaluation on your job. Kevin, what is your job here? You couldn't evaluate where your young guys were to make this team better. You completely misevaluated where this team was. You completely misevaluated what the guys you've brought in would bring to this to help round it out. You completely misevaluated what you were able to trade for. You've completely misevaluated this entire situation for going on 2 years. And the way you talk today shows us you are so far in left fucking field that you're going to drive this thing off the edge and take us to the Buffalo Sabres. And guess what happens when that starts happening in this market, folks? No one wants to hear it, but Kevin Cheveldayoff drives this off the cliff where he seems absolutely hell-bent on doing it, listening to him. No one believes in this more than Kevin Cheveldayoff. You will start hearing the noise getting louder as he takes us very clearly to the Buffalo Sabres situation about a team like, or a market like Houston waiting for this team. This is what Mark Chipman is trusting Kevin Cheveldayoff to do, and where he is talking about taking this is going to destroy this franchise for a very, very, very long time. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of listening to it. How can anybody sit there and watch the 28 minutes of absolute groveling bullshit and believe this man is the right man as an executive to carry this forward? He doesn't even know what world he's in. He is just happy to be in the NHL. That is all Kevin Cheveldayoff is. It is a privilege. Guess what? That privilege has standards, and you have missed the bar of those standards for going on 2 fucking years. No one wants to hear about how privileged you are having this job. You should not have this job. You fooled a used car salesman into 15 plus years on this job. No one wants to hear it anymore. You are taking this off a fucking cliff. A cliff.
But Nick, it's an honor and a privilege to be in the NHL. And the magnitude of having that job and trying to put together a group to win a Stanley Cup isn't something he takes for granted. He's very fortunate to stand here, okay? And look, you're a very emotional player. And, these are some of the convos that we have. And, just because you're emotional, it's all right because, look, they're putting him on notice every day. Every day they're put on notice, and they're doing their best, and they're trying. And that's all that matters. In this world, as long as you try, that's all that matters, right? In professional sports, as long as you try, that's what gets you through. That's what gets you new contracts. Results don't matter. Results don't matter.
On the line?
Nope.
When has this day? There has not been a day in Kevin Cheveldayoff's life he woke up and thought he might lose his job. Not fucking one.
No.
Because none of us have thought that was even remotely possible until Connor Hellebuck spoke up.
Yep.
And even then, you were correct that it wasn't correct. He has not woken up one day in his life in the NHL with the same reality 31 other GMs deal with. Everyone wants to talk about how hard his job is. Every other GM in this league has a standard. Kevin Cheveldayoff doesn't. Every other GM in this league is not guaranteed 15 years of job security. Kevin Cheveldayoff is. You can look at this like he has a hard job and he is so hard done by in life. And how could we ever question Kevin Cheveldayoff and how it's so unfair to him in this world where he's making millions of dollars with unlimited job security? You know what? At this point, throw anybody in our chat, even the people I disagree with, in that chair and just let them try. If that is the entire basis. Because guess what? Anyone in our chat right now would feel proud and thrilled because any day in the NHL is a gift. We could all feel those things and tell you we feel those things. We could all tell you we care. We could all tell you it's hard. We could all tell you that, don't worry, the fairy dust is going to get into these players' minds and this team is right there and they're going to win despite winning 4 playoff series in 15 years.
Yep.
They have missed the playoffs twice in the last 5 years, despite only winning 1 playoff round. Guess what? You could put a monkey in the seat to do that and try and see what happens. And then sit there and spit bullshit for 28 minutes. What is the point of any of this under Kevin Cheveldayoff?
So outside of the fact that I can understand the idea that, hey, look, job security is a great thing, right? In general, right? People in a regular job would probably feel great knowing they've got a job for life and that they're comfortable and they're settled. All of that in a, regular day-to-day office type job, I'm sure is a absolute blessing and everybody would be thrilled to have it. The issue is, though, when you're the general manager of a professional sports team, having that, quote unquote, sort of Damocles over your head is actually a good thing. It spurs you to make decisions. It spurs you to take risks. And sometimes it's not going to work and you'll get fired. But sometimes it does work and you look like a fucking genius and you're able to push your franchise forward. You need that pressure. You need that external thing letting you know that, hey, you can't be so complacent to never do anything that's hard. That's my issue with it is, it's going to be hard to be the GM of the team. What are you doing to make it easier? What are you doing to make this a place that people want to come and play? Is this an organization that the rest of the league is talking good about? According to Connor Hellebuck, no. From what he's hearing, this isn't a place people want to come, and that falls directly on Kevin Cheveldayoff's shoulders. Let's go to the phones. I've got Diamond Dave calling in. Welcome to the landing strip.
Nick Lynham, let me ask you a very direct question.
Let's hear it.
Do you think that the Chicago Wolves GM that Chipper hired understands math?
Oh, not a chance. He would have been a pro hockey player.
That's Larry Simmons'
and
job.
on that trajectory since he was like 14 years old, bounced around the minors. And then because the hockey industry is like, oh, if you know somebody, you ran into somebody along your way, guess what? You're qualified to run a hockey team and $1 billion business. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
It's math, right? Because
yeah,
like let's take what Liz said at face value. That look, Winnipeg's a hard place to sell to. Okay,
100%.
I get it. I moved from Winnipeg. I understand why it's hard to sell that market. But is the fact that the Winnipeg Jets the oldest, slowest team in the league, is that not math at the end of the day?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, saw a great stat actually on the Kenny and Ray show. Listen to this one. This is ahead of the curve. Kevin Cheveldayoff, the genius, is. For the 5 oldest teams in the NHL this year, Winnipeg being the oldest for most of this year, missed the playoffs. 5 of the 6 youngest are in there watching, and we're watching them right now. That's how ahead of the curve Kevin Cheveldayoff is.
So say what you will, and to be honest with you, like I haven't been able to watch that many games this year. I've not watched the Moose at all, so I'm behind the curve that way. But say what you will about the Lamberts and the Jagers of the world, and I have to admit I don't know who else is in the prospect pool. But
not much.
They're at least faster and younger, right? Is that not a mathematical fact?
Outside Barlow, probably the other ones, yeah.
Like the Vegas Golden Knights will win at least one more Stanley Cup, if not 2 in the next 10 years. The Utah Mammoth will win a Stanley Cup in the next 10 years. The Montreal Canadiens will probably win one in the next 10.
This year, yeah.
And you look at how this team operates. It's Chipper was so excited. Like, I don't know, how old were you guys when the team moved? Like in 2011 or whenever it was. Yeah, 2011. Like, how old were you guys? Do you remember that?
I was 22.
I remember
old.
that day. Yeah. I was 16. Mikey was 22.
Okay. So one of the things that Chipper gloated about was that I can't believe we hired the general manager of the Chicago Wolves.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you play AHL games, you get AHL results. And that's what this is. Mark Chipman runs the Winnipeg Jets like an American Hockey League affiliate, and he is proud of it.
Hey, to touch on that.
It's not a major league franchise, and it never will be a major league franchise until the man at the top and his minions come to terms with the fact that math is a thing. Old and slow does not win hockey games. To win the Stanley Cup, you have to win series. To make the playoffs, you have to win games. To win games, you have to have a positive goal differential. To have a positive goal differential, you have to be fast and young. Maybe I'm oversimplifying.
To touch on the AHL operation thing, despite my thoughts, to touch on the AHL operation standpoint, despite my thoughts on Paul Maurice, big picture, and what he let happen in his remaining years in Winnipeg, that was the big story, was Paul Maurice came into town and actually brought so much of the inner workings up to an NHL standard because they weren't before. For the Claude Noel days, this team was operating like an AHL level, and Paul Maurice came into town and completely changed all of that. And now you look at a guy like Rick Bowness is able to carry that fire, and now we have Kevin Cheveldayoff, who's never shown outside of being in Winnipeg that he ever belonged in the NHL, and Scott Arniel. I think it plays right into exactly what you're talking about.
Well, here's a fact. Whether you like Paul Maurice or not, it is a fact that he took the Florida Panthers to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. It is a fact that he won 2 of them. It is a fact that players that he coached on, I think it was Team Finland, said, we should just get Paul Maurice to coach him. We love him that much. The Panthers love him. Are you open to the possibility that there's more than we know, or that we don't even know that we don't know, that happened between Pomo and Chevy, and that maybe Pomo wore a little bit too much blame? Maybe a little bit blame was earned, but maybe too much. What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. If you ask me honestly, I think Paul Maurice knew the situation he created and wanted to save his rep, as like the Winnipeg Jets were his last chance at being in the NHL again. He was banished to TSN in the KHL forever until the Jets came calling.
Yep.
I think he realized the situation he had a big hand in and that it was over here under the leadership days, and he knew, or the Wheeler days, and he knew he couldn't address it, and he wanted to save his own face. That's my Paul Maurice thing.
I think you're right. And I would have been in 2011. I guess I would have been 30 something. Lost track of my age. I'm old now. But like I said the other night when I was high. And by the way, I was high as a kite the other night that I called. Terrible call.
Beautiful.
But I went to my first game in '87. I've been through this before, and it scares the living shit out of me that Chipper does not seem to be cognizant of the past. Like, these decisions have bigger consequences than whether the team wins or not. This isn't Los
Can I give you my
Angeles.
Chipper theory? That's getting in the way of this. So I believe strongly Mark Chipman wants the Winnipeg Jets to be here for the rest of his life. I very strongly believe he wants all this. I believe, this is just based on reading the man. This is just me taking a total guess. But I believe when Howardcheck left at that age for him, and then watching the team leave, that was a lasting memory. And he's wanted that narrative about this city to change by keeping a drafted, developed, and elite core. And I think we have. I had someone pitch it this way. I think the Winnipeg Jets, it came on the podcast when we talked about the fear of pissing off the core and trading them out. I think if you asked them honestly, they want to keep that core group together to retire here because of what that would mean of this set of our first core retired Winnipeg Jets. We did it. We were able to do what 1.0 wasn't. But I think they wanted to have.
And I know we're not disagreeing with each other, brother, because I know we're on the same page. Do you think Kelly McCrimmon and like the ownership of the Vegas Golden Knights gives a shit whether Mark Stone has a effing statue outside the T-Mobile Center?
Agreed. And I think this is what's getting in the way. They've been trying to keep this select group happy while winning. And you look forward, that's no longer an option. You're going to have to decide, essentially, is this a vanity project or is this a serious NHL franchise? This is where the two roads are at this point. But I believe that's the mentality that's gotten them stuck.
David Thompson's like 75 years old. That man is not going to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is we don't know what that side of the ownership group is going to look like if he's no longer with us and his, whatever the succession feels as part of the business plan. And I'm not trying to be a dick. And I agree with what you said about Chipper and what he wants to do, but at a certain point, physics are going to take over. And I'm gobsmacked by how cavalier he is with this team, knowing the past. And that's all I got to say about that. I'm done.
No, appreciate the call in. I see Colin Hall wants to call in too. Great to hear from you, Diamond Dave. Appreciate you being here.
Take care, man.
Let's keep it moving. John Chan asks, Nick's thoughts on trading the core 55-81, 44-37 for NHL-ready prospects, a jumpstart rebuild. Very much on board with that. We'll get into more of it in the conclusion of this show because I think we're still heading that direction today, actually.
Yep. Going back to Chevy's comments earlier, one of the...
Jay Miller.
Oh, you got there?
Go for it.
No, go ahead.
My mic had lag there, so I just pointed out that Jay Miller said that was a tough watch today. Zero confidence in either dude. Where did you want to go here?
Oh, just looking back at Chevy's comments when they asked him, free agency is difficult, trades aren't a solution. So can you assess your draft and develop model? Oh, here we go. We've got Colin Hall. We'll go to Colin first. Hey, Colin, you're on the landing strip. Go ahead.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing good, man. How about you?
Honestly, had a better day. My day was really great before I heard Scott Arniel and Kevin Cheveldayoff take a shit on stage. But I mean, that's all you can do.
Yep.
I got a 4-pronged point here to make.
Let's do it.
Prong number one: you just watch Kevin Cheveldayoff sit in front of media members, and in one breath, he was talking about, I know this team needs to be better. I know we need better players. I'm going to do everything possible to make this team better. He didn't even shake off the idea of potentially maybe at some point down the road trading a core guy. I know he's not going to do that. I just want to point out that he never shook that off. He never directly said no. I also want to point out he didn't directly say who was core and who was not. I feel like those are steps that are important with this road that we're almost certainly going down that sees this team end up bottoming out, essentially. And eventually they're going to have to embrace the rebuild. But in one breath, they're sitting down talking about how they know they need to do better. They need to be aggressive. They need to improve. They need to add. But then in the other breath, they're saying, oh, but, it's Winnipeg. It's a hard market. It's hard to attract free agents. It's hard to make trades. And then you hear Arniel say, oh, we're in that room listening to the general manager when they get denied on trades or no move contracts come up. My question simply is, why do they bother going for players with no move contracts in the first place? It's like Diamond Dave was saying. It's simple math. If you have a player that you want and they can say no, then you shouldn't go for them. Why aren't you going for players that don't have that ability to say no? My second prong is Kevin Cheveldayoff loves to sit down and talk about the individual awards that this team won, but I found it very interesting that he kept bringing up the Jennings and never once brought up the player who basically won them the Jennings and then got three extra trophies on top of that to go with it. Lastly, with the discussion about 81 and 55 being together, I also think it's very silly to see Scott Arniel say, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll split them up. We know it's not going to happen. You said for 51 games that you were trying to figure out what this team could do, and you still landed on 81 and 55. You're not going to play another 51 games to sit down and figure that out. That's very clearly a decision that you have already made. So all in all, I get the sense that this team has their foot in both ponds, if you're picking up what I'm saying. I don't think they know exactly what they want to do or what they're going to be able to do. And as a result, they're being super non-committal. They were even non-committal to Scott Arniel when he sat down and mentioned to the media that he was confident he'd be back next year. He was talking about everything he was going to do next year. And then Kevin Cheveldayoff was like, oh, okay, well, we'll see what happens after the exit interviews.
So, what did you make, Colin, of the non-committal to Scott Arniel? Is here in a couple of weeks?
What I gathered from that is they're going to sit down and they're going to go to a few of the players who did not have as savory comments to the Winnipeg Jets organization, and they're going to say, hey, what do we have to do to get your mind to turn here? And if they look at them and say, listen, we don't want Scott Arniel coaching next year, you're going to see his head down the block, right? It's just as simple as that. The whole pause around it is entirely because they haven't gotten the ammunition that they want to make the decision, even though they shouldn't need that ammunition in the first place.
I think it's interesting. Because when I try and break into Chevy's comments, defense being a mindset, clearly a coaching thing. Non-committal, but appreciates how hard they worked. And the fact that I do think, just from a PR perspective, and again, I respect Scott for doing it, the way he phrased some of that stuff publicly, I think will add some heat internally in those exit meetings between management and the coach.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't see a way that it doesn't. There's very clearly some level of butted heads. And even if we take the more rosy interpretation of it, where Scott Arniel is just simply acknowledging that they tried hard, did they really try hard if all the players they went to had no move contracts and they knew for a fact that they were never going to waive it? At that point, doesn't it seem kind of lazy? Doesn't it seem like they're giving themselves a cop-out? Right? Am I insane for thinking that?
No, of course you're not.
Yeah.
Hey, appreciate you calling in, Colin. We're gonna try and do a couple shows a week until the draft. We'll get you on when we know where that draft spot is. We'll talk more prospects, and maybe there's more news by then.
Yes, maybe there is. I'll get to see you guys then.
We'll see you then. Mikey, anywhere you're looking to go where I just want to shout out in the chat. Andy R., first-time listener, says, love the call-in format, first-time listener. A few different first-time chatters in the chat. Thank you for checking this show out. We go live after every Jets game. We open the phone lines. Anytime someone wants to get a takeoff, we'll talk about anything. You want to tell me I'm wrong? That's okay, too. You want to add to the convo? Feel free. We are here all season long. We're going to try and do a couple per week until the off season is in full swing past July 1st. Appreciate you being here. Let your friends and family know that are Jets fans, and let's keep growing this community.
Absolutely. So, yeah, bouncing off of what Colin said, I think so. The reason they end up in a spot like that. Oh, actually, hey, we got another caller. Let's go see the Silver Scrub.
Let's hear the Silver
Hello.
Scrub.
Thank you for calling in. You're on the landing strip.
Hey, how are you guys?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
Better now that we get to talk to all of you.
Yeah, that's great. I'm better now that you guys are doing a show. So here's a quick question for you guys. Do you know how many people are in Green Bay, Wisconsin?
Not many.
800K?
We got, according to Wikipedia here, the 2024 census, 107,000
All right, that was
people.
That was a little pretty close.
Yeah, so they have an NFL team there. It's quite a successful NFL team. They don't have trouble attracting players. I know different circumstances. It's in the States. The Milwaukee, I think, is like a 4 or 5 hour drive. But you don't see them making excuses going, hey, we don't want, like, people don't want to come to Green Bay. We can't get people to Green Bay. Like, they leaned into their history. They drafted well. And then they know when to move off of players. Because if you look at it with the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, if you follow the NFL, they knew when to move off of him and to bring in the successor in Jordan Love, right? So what I don't understand is why the Jets don't take a Green Bay Packers-esque model and go, own the city, own who you are, your location, and then just when you got to move off people to get assets, you move off them.
That would make sense to me. Like that. Okay, this is what's so frustrating. As someone that's like honestly seen this coming since the deadline, and there's receipts with this show that this was all predictable. The Winnipeg Jets lean into the reasons why they can't make it work rather than changing their process to a place where it can work. And yes, that's going to mean that the Winnipeg Jets core guys will never be lifelong Jets. And guess what? That's part of keeping a stable franchise in this market and turning core over core. What we heard today was a commitment to the process that brought them to the biggest drop-off a President's Trophy team has ever had in this league, and a commitment to trying to do that again. We know, this is what's frustrating, we know that there is disadvantages to this market. None of us are coming on this show and talking about like, oh, no, this is all a lie. This is the easiest job. Players would come here. None of us are saying that. What we expect to see from a team that's worth $1 billion on the back of this franchise and this market showing up and selling out a barn for a decade straight out of the gate is that you're going to take care of this and adapt so that you can consistently go era to era and make sure you don't end up happening what 1.0 happened. As someone that owns this team and is familiar with the car dealer market, do we think that the smallest family-owned dealerships in Winnipeg just try and do the same stuff that Birchwood does to try and earn your business? No. Any small business in any area of business has to adapt to the situation they're in and find a way to become profitable with those assets to keep going. And we don't see that. We don't even see an attempt. We have seen the same tried and true process that has them a bottom 10 team in playoff wins, 4 playoff round wins in 15 years, and the biggest fall off in President's Trophy's history in the league. And there's a commitment to doing it the same way all over again.
Yeah, and I was going to jokingly say, like, what do you think happens first? The Jets move to Houston or go back to Atlanta or or a Stanley Cup, and I was like, no, that's not even like a funny joke. It's not even possible. So like, do we get like a Cheveldayoff firing or some sort of like steps down or something before Chipman's like done, or does he just steward the team into wherever that goes, whether that be here into the abyss or to a different market?
Well, Chevy wants to take this into the abyss apparently.
Because that's where I'm at right now. Because I watch this and I'm just like, it's rough, man. Appreciate the show, guys. Thank you.
Hey, appreciate you calling in and being here, Silver Scrub. Turd Ferguson says, if we try to play like the Yankees on here, we will lose to the Yankees out there. Billy Brad Pitt Bean.
Mm-hmm.
The Winnipeg Jets cannot approach this like the big boys can. You will have to do things that are uncomfortable to continue being successful in this market. You will have to change how you approach the business of assets in this market. Yes, does that sound like a big task because Winnipeg's hard? Yes, but there is avenues. There is ways to do this. We will mock out. You know what? I don't have it handy, but I've been mocking out an idea of how you could run a franchise in Winnipeg and not run into this where the Winnipeg Jets are staring down, chasing individual awards, and putting this franchise in the Buffalo Sabre spot of the last 15 years, or they do the uncomfortable hard things and give this a chance to a lasting era. I don't know, man. It's frustrating.
It is. The way that it looks like that it's going, I don't see a world where Kevin Cheveldayoff is removed from the position by Mark Chipman.
Chance.
Right? I've been pretty strong on that the entire way through. Mark Chipman himself has told us that. The only way you're seeing that type of organizational change is if, one, Kevin Cheveldayoff decides to retire, or two, he decides to move himself up into a more of a, quote unquote president of hockey operations, and then they hire somebody or they promote one of the assistant GMs like a Larry Simmons. Those are the only ways you're really going to see any type of quote unquote organizational change, and it really doesn't change the philosophy of the team, the way that it's built, the way that it's going. Going back to some of the earlier comments about how it feels still like an American Hockey League type of organization, I think my Habs are a really good example of that. You had Marc Bergevin running the team for 9 years, being able to put it over the way that you would, an original six team expects and what the fan base expects. And, it's been, how many years since the Stanley Cup? It's been so long, right? So the first thing they did after removing Marc Bergevin was hire a president of hockey operations to oversee the vision and the philosophy of the team, and then a general manager to do the day-to-day work, because that day-to-day work is different than that overall vision. And right now, like if Kevin Cheveldayoff was an assistant GM or the head of player personnel on any other team, you might go, that's he seems to really care about his players. He wants to, you can maybe make that argument about it if that's the camp that you're in. But he hasn't shown us how an NHL general manager can put a group over. He hasn't shown us that he has the creativity to make it work in Winnipeg where it's hard. I'll give you that it's hard. I won't even pretend like it's this is an easy market. Well, I will fully give it to you in that aspect. It's hard. What are you doing to make it easier? What are the creative ways you're finding? What are the analytics you are using? What are all the tools that you have? Where there's no salary cap? In the GM world, where there's no movement clauses in the amount of people you can hire in your hockey ops. So what are you doing to find those angles, find the players that the other teams are missing out on, identify those players, going through waivers that can help you right now. Those guys don't have no move clauses because they're going through fucking waivers at that time. We were wondering why the Jets keep seeming to go for people with no move clauses. It's not so much that they're focusing on somebody that has a no move clause specifically. It's that they don't have the ability to identify young NHL talent. They can't identify it in their own market when they watch it play in their own city with their own fucking team with the Moose. How are they going to identify it with other teams? We've seen what amateur scouting has looked like over the past 5 to 10-ish years. It's not great there. So they keep looking for like established, older, veteran, quote unquote, and people who know how to win. And a lot of them keep, they so happen to have a lot of no movement clauses when you're looking at 30 to 35-year-olds. Who they have deemed, a big, strong, good, guy, he's going to help us get this over. They keep going for that because they misunderstand where they are and where the NHL is. And that's why they keep ending up with people with no move clauses and don't want to come to Winnipeg and no trade clauses. It comes from that fundamental inability to really understand and identify young talent. They have not shown that, and they still don't have it.
Thinking of that, one of the quotes today, did we think we were going to get to college without going to high school, is how Chevy put it.
Yes.
Did we think we were just going to get to the playoffs because of past performance? Did we skip a step? So that's where I have to grade myself too. Let's get into grades. Today's the unofficial end of this past season for Kevin Cheveldayoff and Scott Arniel. Anything moving forward will be about next season. Should we grade them on whether they skipped a step from high school into passing university? What do you think of that quote? What grades are you handing out for Kevin Cheveldayoff and Scott Arniel this season? Let us know in the chat what you would grade their performances here.
Well, first off, with Chevy, when they asked him, what grade would you give yourself? He said, well, this season, it stays with me. It all ends with me. You can't feel good about what's happened, but I have to pick myself up and move forward, which, first off, isn't a grade, Kevin. I don't know what you thought that answer was. That's not a grade, first of all. But I'm glad that you're able to pick yourself up and move forward. I was real worried about you there for a second. That was, whew.
Caitlin Doucette says, wait, this is their perception on that one. Did he just admit last year was a fluke? That is how everyone should be reasonably looking at this. Is last year was the abnormality of the last 5 years. And it still had you on the fringe, St. Louis beating you without the Manitoba Miracle.
Yeah. Everything broke right for the Jets last year, right? Every piece of puck luck went their way. All the one goal games went their way. That it was an absolute, you had 8 players go for career years in terms of points and goals and games play, all those type of things. That was the aberration. This is more so where they've been. This is more of what their process has been. We've got Matt Rothman on the call here.
Get Matt Rothman on.
Hey Matt, you're on the landing strip.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, I think of course, talking about grades and all. I mean, I basically put Chevy should get an F- because, for one, even if you just look at the past 18 months, I can't even think of like any decent movies made then. But I think the overall thing of Chevy as a whole, I mean, I just go back to the 2021-22 season, and that was a horrible season. They missed the playoffs, and that was the year, of course, they gave Chevy that extension despite a poor run by the defense the past few seasons before that. And then their only off-season movement player, specific-wise, was signing, David Riddick, I think it was. And, that's when I knew, right away was just, I just can't trust this guy ever. Even with the moves that he made, I get, for example, the 2024 deadline, when he traded for Monahan and to Foley. It's just, I always look back to that offseason in 2022 when he basically did absolutely nothing, and I think that's basically the parallels that we've seen over the past 18 months where it's the same GM, a guy who's never sort of going to, go out of his way to sort of make those changes. And that's mainly why, even when we won the President's Trophy last year, I was like, it was a good season, but, of course, the playoffs matter the most. And when he made those moves for Shen and Tanev, right away I knew they were just weakening the team because, those two guys, were they really upgrades over what they had? Probably not. And just going back to the whole thing about like no movement clauses, that's always been my, how to say, it's like the one excuse that I just get so mad about, because it's like, for one, not even most of the league even has like no trade or no movement clauses. Most players like are either very young or have like zero protection in that sense. And the thing is too is that didn't they also basically admit like sometime this season that they didn't have the assets to trade,
Bingo.
for certain players?
Yep.
So if like you
Yes.
don't have the assets to make a move for a guy with the no movement clause, what's the point of even trying to try to plug them out from wherever they are? Because that team's probably going to laugh in your face, when you try to trade for them.
Hard to argue, man. You're speaking my language. No, thank you for the call, Matt. Speaking a lot of truth bombs, I'm
thank
sure
you.
a lot of people in the chat agree with what they just heard from you. Turd reminds us, and this is the beauty of doing the podcast. There's always receipts. But Turd reminds us, remember when he had a chance to trade Colby Barlow's pick for Sanheim to address the D-cord?
That's right.
Don't you remember in 2022 when he prioritized Dylan and Nate Schmidt when there was an RFA Devin Taves available? Look at how those moves look differently now.
Look at the return
They
on
have
Taves.
been Taves was 2 seconds, and Brendan Dillon was 2 seconds.
Right? Like, yeah. Look
And
at
then
that
a
right
third
there.
was Nate Schmidt. There is opportunities in this league. They value and prioritize age and experience over taking real bets, and it's caught up to them. In the chat, we're getting a lot of D's and D minuses for Scott Arniel with some F's. Kevin Cheveldayoff with F's all around, and even a couple G's and E's for less than an F. What are you giving for your letter grades on the Jets' two most important shareholders at this point?
Well, I'm going to echo Kevin Cheveldayoff today when he was talking about the young players coming up and how they have to earn their spots. They have to earn their positions. And you know what? I definitely think Kevin Cheveldayoff earned a big fat F. Just straight out, it was a failure. This season, whether you want to include this offseason, going back to the trade deadline last year, whatever it is an absolute failure to have a President's Trophy winning team drop 34 points. I don't care the run that they went on after they had a whole bunch of lineup decisions forced onto their hands. You don't get to tout, he touted at one point, we didn't have Rosane during the 11-game win streak, so I went out and I got him. Dog, you told us you weren't going to trade Logan Stanley, and Yarmo phoned you. That has nothing to do with an 11-game win or losing streak. That has nothing to do with you identifying a problem. They called you, and the deer shot itself and then tied itself to the hood of your car. You didn't go hunting for that. You didn't do anything with that. Just an absolute joke. So, unfortunately, Kevin, it's a big fat F. I'm going to need your parents to call me. We're going to have a sit down about this. We need a parent-teacher because this is just unacceptable work, my friend. This is unacceptable.
Did you like when he praised themselves for how they incorporated youth this year?
Oh my God, yeah, they did such a great job incorporating the youth. It's so wonderfully lucky that Salamonson wasn't ready to play a second before Pionk got hurt. It's absolutely incredible that Lambo was only ready the moment that he was able to step onto the ice for that second set there after the trade deadline. Man, I can't believe that worked out perfectly. These are like I said, they've got their finger on the pulse.
Can I point out, actually, he talked about something that was a form of mismanagement. It's on a small scale, but it's relevant right now for the Manitoba Moose. You know why Isak Rosane isn't playing for the Moose in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
Is that not mismanagement?
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead. Let the chat know.
So Chevy talked about this today, and after the deadline, and we've talked about this, you get 4 call-ups the rest of the year. Your roster is expanded to whatever you could fit under the cap, but you get 4 call-ups from the deadline on. We know they used 2 of them on Yeager and Lambert, or Yeager and Lambert, was it right?
Yes.
No, Yeager was emergency.
Yeah, Yeager was emergency. It was
Salmonson,
Salo and yeah.
Okay, so they used 2 of the 4 the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And then they used emergencies when we saw some of the other guys. As they were projecting out the last, 15 games from the deadline, whatever's left, they came to the determination that they might need all 4 of their call-ups. So they called up Rosén as part of the transaction. So he was always on the NHL roster with the Winnipeg Jets. They used 2 of the 4. Now Rosén's season's done, not getting development time, trying to help the Moose out.
Yep.
Because you misprojected how you would even incorporate this youth that you're claiming that you properly brought up. You didn't even think ahead of how this youth would be used. You got forced into it by injuries.
And then proceeded.
You protected yourself.
And then proceeded to play him 6 minutes a night and pat yourself on the back.
We're talking about the most basic thing, a paper transaction. Looking at the Moose system, who are the 4 guys you were even thinking about? We were throwing Bauer out at the deadline as a joke to come up and scrap.
Yep.
And now Rosén doesn't get extended look in development in Winnipeg as he's still learning their systems and could have helped the Moose. It is like every little detail.
It's inexcusable.
It is inexcusable. It's like at some point there's got to be a standard here. This is basic stuff. We're just 2 guys that love this sport and follow the business of the sport. And we know these details and can project and guess what this team and how they would use it. How do you not know this?
We've let's find out from our friend in San Jose. I've got SGA Sharks fan. Let's go to you. You're on the landing strip.
I'm a big fan of the Landing Strip podcast. I think you do a great job covering the Winnipeg Jets. The San Jose Sharks are we're currently in a rebuild phase right now. You have to build around a young core. Macklin Selbury and Will Smith. I mean, the Sharks, they had a really great season. We got eliminated after we lost to the Kings after the Sabres after the Kings beat the Seattle Kraken 5-3, which officially eliminated us from the postseason. But the Sharks are a really good organization, and they're led under head coach general manager Mike Greer. But we had so much optimism in this team, but we weren't just able to make it. We were so inconsistent. That's just the problem with the Sharks. They're just very inconsistent. They went on a losing streak, and then they won a lot of games, and then they went back on a losing streak. It's just I want to have loyalty in my team, but also when they're inconsistent, that just doesn't make me want to believe in them anymore. Does that? As you both are Winnipeg Jets fans, when your team is inconsistent and when your team loses, do you feel like you want to lose hope in your team, or you still want to ride with your team and still go to games and still do shows and everything and still be consistent?
Hey, we're going to answer that. Appreciate the call. Great to hear from you. Mikey, let's get into that. For me, I have no hope in the direction of the Winnipeg Jets. I would much rather be in San Jose's spot than Winnipeg's. I actually think there's a trade to be made between our franchises. Nick Lynham has a Sean Reynolds I'm going to pitch. A variation of his idea I've been thinking about. But Mikey, where are you with the hope of the Winnipeg Jets right now?
I think what we want is to have hope, right? We want the Jets to do well. We want to see this team succeed. We want it for this city. And we want a general manager and a head coach that shares that type of vision, that is going to be proactive, that's going to be creative, and, make the best out of what's supposed to be the hardest job in the NHL. We keep hearing is GM for the Winnipeg Jets. All we're asking for, I think, is a little bit of creativity, a little bit of change, somebody who maybe gets it a little bit more than the current group. But, we wouldn't be doing this show 82 times after every game and for hours and hours on end if we didn't care.
It's funny because I think where this is going, Mike Greer is the type of GM I'd want to get out of this situation with what he's done in San Jose and where I think the Jets are heading under Kevin Cheveldayoff. I didn't give my grade for Chevy yet. It's clear it's an F. Anyone that grades Chevy higher than an F in the last 12 months, don't want to hear it. But you want to talk some fantasy trades? You want to get something going? Nick's been mapping out where this is going, in my opinion. And I got one for you here. Okay. My camera's, I'll fix it as we go here. So Sean Reynolds had pitched the idea of trading Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele together. We talked about this, right, Mikey?
Yep.
You can hear me, eh?
Oh, yeah. Yep, we're good.
So, let's see. Give me a second. The San Jose Sharks, I've been saying, I think they're going to go buy in big this summer and try and get going in the Celebrini window. They clearly need D, and them just missing the playoffs makes them miss the top 4 in this draft. They have one defenseman signed next year, and they have Dickinson as their big prospect who played this year. You know what the move is? Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello around Michael Misa and number 11 overall. You give them an entire pair and a top 5 to 7 level defenseman at a $6 million deal. They signed Granlund for their 3C. Misa was largely playing 4C and power play this year. You have Will Smith and Celebrini that could both play center. It's easier to find wingers to build out a roster than it is to go find our true number 1 defenseman. I think Michael Misa's the truth, and you want to start pouring gas on turning this thing around. That's a guy that's going to jump in the lineup next year. And the funny thing about it, I think for both Michael Misa and Dickinson, I think it would be best for both of their development. Michael Misa would immediately come into Winnipeg and be sheltered, but get more role with Lowry and Scheifele ahead of him, but not be at the bottom of the depth chart. And I also think Dickinson playing behind a Josh Morrissey would be a lot more beneficial to his development and what San Jose is trying to build there when you get a special player like that. You reunite the Olympians in Morrissey and Misa. Just an idea I've been going back and forth on here.
That's big. That's huge. That's a nuclear option. If and again, if you go back to about November, I think was the first time I brought up the idea of, hey, look, we might be looking at a Josh Morrissey trade a hell of a lot sooner than what was thought of before, which was never. So the fact that now we've got trade packages and ideas and things starting to move around, right?
Cooking.
I've
been cooking.
My only worry is I don't know if they're going to go for both Misa and the pick, right? You may need to sweeten the Jets side of things a little bit more. Morrissey, I don't know if he gets you both Misa and the pick. Yeah, DeMello, while DeMello is a benefit being right-handed and stuff, I don't know if it's enough. You know what I'm saying? But I love the idea. I love Michael Misa. Anytime we've had a Sharks game this year, you've heard me rant and rave about Michael Misa. So yeah, I absolutely love it. It's a nuclear option for sure, but it's a way to kickstart things.
Hey, if it has to be like a future first as they expect themselves to dive up, I'll take future picks from them.
Yep.
But this is just the concept.
Yeah, exactly right. It may need to be more of a conditional future type thing, but that's one I'm willing to look at for sure. Misa would be a perfect addition.
Yeah, you want to talk about it.
Although I'm worried that we're going to be seeing that pick, the Jets pick, get moved this summer now after Chevy's comment today.
Let's get into our final takeaways. And I might have said Misa was Olympian. I guess you meant Celebrini. That's what I meant. Yeah, Celebrini and Morrissey. Misa being the piece you got to go get a Josh Morrissey kind of thing. Al Camino says, don't Morrissey and Sandberg expire at the same time? Another season like this, and it could get bleak. They could. And this is why I think you got to push the gas pedal down and start reinventing a core.
Yep.
I've been gaming out some stuff here. Maybe we'll do an episode on it. Trevor, good to see you in the chat, says, oh, brother, these guys stink. Let's get in. What is your takeaway leaving today? I know you've been pushing me on option 4 still being in play. Safe to say the Winnipeg Jets think option 4 is the best path. Leaving today's pressers, where do you feel this summer is going?
Okay, I'll give you where I see it going. You're probably not going to like it, and I'll be very happy to be told why I'm wrong. But here's where I see this kind of playing out. Today's press conferences did absolutely nothing in my mind to, soften the blow for Connor Hellebuck. I don't think he feels assured. I don't think he's going to come out of today feeling like they understand what it's going to take to build a winner, to make the changes. The status quo was the kind of the message I got from Chevy in terms of personnel and if big players are going to be moving. When they asked him specifically at one point, what kind of changes can we expect coming? One of the things that he pointed out to was not moving players off of the roster was, well, we've got a top pick now that we're going to choose how to use going forward. To me, that doesn't scream we're drafting and we're going. That screams I might want to move that pick for second line help right now. So here's where I see things going. Connor Hellebuck is still going to ask out. I believe there's going to be still a trade request coming from number 37. I do think it gets done. I think the obvious choice is going to be the right choice. I do think it ends up being to the Florida Panthers. So I do think that pick gets moved out and Hellebuck goes and we get that pick back. I think the pick gets used then. The Florida pick or the Jets pick gets used in a trade. They're going to try to one more time run it back with this quote-unquote core. The group, again, they've got so many players signed for next season already that they may feel like all it is augmenting around the edges. They talked about, the outer core is already good enough for a championship, just a little bit of help. So I think they'll probably end up drafting with one of the picks, use the other pick to try to bring in a, second line help right now. They're going to do something stupid like sign Stuart Skinner to play goal for them next season. No other major changes are going to come in terms of like the lineup. They'll run it back with this core minus Connor Hellebuck. They're going to fall short again next year in that playoff race. We're going to have all of these same questions pop up, and that's when the Josh Morrisseys and the Kyle Connors start to ask out, start to say, hey, we're not going to be a part of this. We can't do this 2 years, in a row. We don't think this is going in the right direction. Looking at Chevy's quote, he said, we are certainly open to talk about anybody, but anything that we do is about making this group one step closer to winning a championship. I don't think that was lip service today. I think that was the way he's approaching the offseason. And I think they're going to need the players to be the catalysts of change this time around. And it's going to take a whole second year like this one to fully kick that off, because I think they're going to try to, quote unquote, run it back one more time, just minus Connor Hellebuck.
So, obviously, I've been pushing back on that this will be run back as we saw this year. And I left today as I see the most common thoughts in the chat are we are screwed. Everyone in the chat left today thinking we are screwed. I actually left today feeling really good about my prediction last show. And Trevor Mohan's right, says this group, 17 and 19 players, are already here. They do have, after signing Cole Koepke, if we want to touch on that, 11 forwards committed to, plus Lambert, so 12 forwards. Yep. They have 6 D signed. Yep. You could see the framework of a run back coming. I don't think it's in control of the Winnipeg Jets any longer. And I think Connor Hellebuck becomes the first domino this summer in the next few weeks to request a trade. Why do you think that, you might ask? Clearly that was my takeaway from his press conference and how he approached it, and I know that's not everyone's interpretation. Elliot Friedman on the Jets, last season's moves went poorly, and twice Connor Hellebuck referred to a player procurement limitation. He needs to be convinced they can get help that they need. Who else was it? It might have been Friedman as well. In his blog that he wrote about it, as someone that follows Elliot Friedman closely and how the insiders work, the fact that he's stressed, he reported that article like a journalist would, just laying out the facts. The facts that Elliot Friedman, the one part he put his lean in that article was saying, this might be the one spot, the Winnipeg Jets, and I stress potentially, there's good news. The fact that Elliot Friedman is stressing that there's likely not good news coming there, and it's early, and he's talked about it being early, but the fact that his early instinct is that's coming is notable to me, given the pedestal I have Elliot Friedman on in covering the sport. And as we've laid out this entire year, I believe the Winnipeg Jets will try and convince Connor Hellebuck they can get the help they need. The reality is, as we've talked about, and Kevin Cheveldayoff Cheveldayoff said at his presser after the deadline, they don't have the assets to get the help they need. Connor Hellebuck he put it out there that he knows they can't get the assets they need. I think Connor Hellebuck realizes how short his window in his career currently is. I think he came to a very big realization that he's going to need to leave this market to win. And I don't think today's press conference would have alleviated those concerns. If I was to guess, I would guess in the next few weeks, we get an article from Elliot Friedman on Connor Hellebuck laying out that he's open to change and that he will work with the Winnipeg Jets a little bit. My prediction as of today is that that'll be the next step in all this. So when that happens, the ball starts rolling. From there, you'll hear the New Jersey Devils, the Buffalo Sabres, Detroit, those type of teams in there, and of course Florida. So there'll be this perception of a bidding war. And when it's all said and done, it'll be that Florida pick and other pieces, and we'll hear it was always Florida. And from there, the rest of the dominoes move. I used to think Josh Morrissey would be the second one. I actually believe if the Connor Hellebuck thing happens this summer, Kyle Connor follows. And maybe we had the wrong 3 American Olympians, and maybe it's the 2 out of Winnipeg and the 1 in Ottawa rather than the 1 in Toronto, though I think that one's coming too.
I think that's coming too.
That is my official prediction, even after we heard what we heard today. I'm going to say, my gut, I'm trusting it here. Connor Hellebuck asks out heading into the draft, and the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to make that deal. And from there, everything changes. That is my official prediction, still leaving today. I don't think it's in the organization's hands anymore. If it was in the organization's hands, and this is really poor to think about, we are really screwed. I think they fucked around and found out a little too long on someone that is chasing something bigger than just a career in Winnipeg. We're talking about Connor Hellebuck chasing the idea of the Hellebuck last name being one of the biggest legacies in the history of this sport. And I think he knows that he can't do it in Winnipeg. And this is where, again, like I said earlier in the show, if this happens, this is where Winnipeg as a market and fan base got to step up. A new era's here. Some new hope might be here. Time to show out and get excited about new storylines. I could be completely off. We could be looking at this on July 2nd, August 1st, first day of training camp, and this all might sound crazy by then. But leaving today, I'm going to bet against Kevin Cheveldayoff like I have the last 18 months. I'm going to play the man. I'm going to play the man on who I think Connor Hellebuck is and where he's at in his career and what that gold medal changed. That is where my money is sitting even today after hearing what we heard. I'm betting against Kevin Cheveldayoff, and I'm betting on Connor Hellebuck being the first domino to a pretty crazy summer in Winnipeg that changes the direction of this franchise in ways that I don't think people are ready for quite yet.
I like it. We've got kind of similar ideas there, just a slightly different timeline. It'll be interesting to see which way it ends up kind of playing out. Do the big dominoes all go this summer and they're forced into it because of Hellebuck going? Or do they stick it around that one extra kick at the can without him, and then they really realize what life was like without him back there? It's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see which way it goes, because no matter what you think, right, in either of those two directions, or the third option of they run it completely back and Hellebuck buys in, and they, either way, it's going to change the future of this franchise massively. This is an inflection point. So yeah, buckle up, everybody.
I see Ticono wants to get on the line, so we'll get him on here. But you know where I think this goes if Hellebuyck is back next year? And you know why I feel comfortable betting against them missing even if they run it back? You know what happens next year if he's still here after going publicly with what he did?
Yeah.
Every single time the Winnipeg Jets lose a couple games in a row or go on a skid, the noise will get louder. We heard Scott Arniel call this group fragile all year. All year we heard that this was a fragile group.
Yep.
Do you think this group can handle what the Vancouver Canucks went through with Quinn Hughes hanging over your head? Ask yourself that and think about that this summer.
That's
what'll happen if they come back.
Absolutely. Let's find out what the mayor of Transcona thinks.
Gentlemen, thanks for taking my call.
What's going on, Ticona?
Well, I mean, I'm going to pat myself on the back, but I mean, go back in the archives, get that first phone call out, first show right after the Olympics. And I said,
Yep.
He's tasted gold, he's tasted winning, he's going to be splitting.
Yep.
We've been talking about it since that first show back.
We all knew that, right? So, honestly, though, I could see it taking maybe up to next year. I think they could try and be stupid enough to even have them a little bit disgruntled in net, waiting for it as they try to run it back one more time here, and then kind of, dump Jomo and him next year. I'm not a particular fan of that, but I could see Chevy being a fan of that.
Oh, that's definitely what they want to do. I can't shake it. I think Hellebuyck forces their hand, and I think that presser, and despite the nuance, was the first stepping stone. One thing that stands out for me is when Hellebuyck did the Tkachuk Brothers podcast, because I've seen hello? I've seen a couple takeaways about the idea that Hellebuyck was really nuanced and he doesn't say much, so we know he wears his harness sleeve. The one thing that stood out to me thinking about this conversation now is he told the Tkachuk brothers that, you know what, he's been kind of quiet, but you're going to hear a lot more out of him moving forward. I think things start to get loud this summer.
Well, again, it could go fast. As easy as I think it could go slow, it could go fast. But, I mean, we both agree that is the countdown's on.
Oh, yeah. The clock's ticking.
Okay, I got a few other points. I know you told me you're going all night, but hey, I don't know if you got that much time for me. But hey, I have a couple other points, and one of them is yes, I'll touch on a couple things earlier caller said tonight. Yeah, at every opportunity, this organization takes a way to cop out. At every opportunity they can, they look for a way to cop out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a definite. But I mean, at some point, they got to be bold. You need a GM to be bold and make certain moves, right? And I mean, I don't know. I guess Chevy will be bold enough to make that move, but I almost wish it was a new GM coming in to handle all that.
Yeah, I feel you there. I don't trust him at all right now.
No, exactly. So, I mean, but what do you think? If they're serious enough, a guy like Patrick Waugh coming in to coach, he would want full roster control. So guys him and Cassidy and that, they're going to want full roster control, and that's why we won't end up with a coach like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me.
So I'm kind of bouncing around there a bit, but okay. So and on a more I don't know, I won't say somber note. Well, it is somber. At the end of the day, if I have to hear Mikey one more Habs comparison.
We're still playing hockey, baby.
Yeah.
Hey, I know. Actually, I'm cheering for you guys. Don't worry. But I just had to get that one in there.
I appreciate
you like
it.
that. At the end of the day, if I have to hear one more Mikey note comparison. Okay. So, and as you can tell, guys, I was reading off notes too, similar to a GM.
You notice that too, Kevin Cheveldayoff's canned first comments of the day sounded like AI might have wrote it from.
That felt
He's teaching us why defense. Yeah, it sounded like ChatGPT.
And I was just about to add, and my notes aren't ChatGPT though.
That's right. That's right.
That opening statement from Kevin Cheveldayoff read like he typed into AI this morning. What should I tell the fans of a hockey team that watch the Winnipeg Jets how defense works today? Like,
no kidding, eh? Yeah, no kidding. But anyways, I'm looking forward to some draft shows and draft talk, and I'm starting to poke my nose around there a little bit. I mean, obviously, you know, to get more exciting when we see where we fall in the drop lotto, and I guess, yeah, I mean, and then we'll see if we hang on to it, or what kind of pick, or if he trades it or what. But yeah.
If he trades if he
trades it and tries running it back with something, and I can just see the 2C he gets in the trade too. And I mean, like, it'll be an even worse move, right?
Most likely.
It'll be terrifying. If that's
the only way I wanted him to trade it is if it was the old trade. I thought if we had like a top pick, we could maybe trade down and get 2 picks, like from a Van or Chicago. That's the only way I'd ever entertain trading like that pick, but that's a whole complete different scenario, right?
Yeah, so, no, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thanks for the time, and I look forward to your shows.
Hey, great to hear it from you, Tico and Paulie. As Trevor reminds us, defending is a mindset. Get out of here.
The other part, too, that made me worry today was when Chevy told us that, hey, look, guys, drafting isn't an exact science. So anything we do is about taking a step to winning a cup with this core. Couple that with the we're going to have a pick that we'll choose how to use later. We'll choose how to use going forward. I'm real worried that they're going to start shopping that first round pick.
Chris Joyce says the only seismic move the Jets can make outside of trading Helly would be to hire Cassidy or Trotz. Hard to argue with either of those jumping behind a bench. And I still don't think either guy can get enough juice out of this current situation to matter.
And like Ticona said, they're going to want roster control, both of those guys. And the Jets apparently don't do that anymore since the departure of Paul Maurice.
So I can't shake the fact that we kept winning the lottery Sims on our post-game shows after losses, that we went on a loss. I think we've been manifesting this. Winning the lottery is simply just a mindset. And we've been in that mindset since November. If anyone's locked in to the ethical win the lottery for a team that wasn't supposed to, it's been us, Mikey, over here on the landing strip.
It's true.
Since November, we jumped on this being a tank. And we've won a lot more Sims than we ever should have. Winning the lottery is a mindset, and we've prepped our fan base for winning that mindset. But
you know, today was a loss.
If they don't win,
I think we should do a tankathon, because today was absolutely an L from Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Oh yeah, we're doing a tankathon.
Excellent.
But if they don't win the lottery, and number 7 moves for a player that isn't Robert Thomas, who again has a full no trade, and the way he ended the year with Holloway and Snuggerud, I would be kind of surprised if we hear his name out there again.
Yeah.
Unless you get a player at that level, oh my, you're gonna see me melt down like never before. It'll be really hard for me to keep it together.
It's going to be trade deadline 2025 all over again.
Trevor says they'll find a way to bungle winning the lottery.
Oh, God. Yeah, no doubt.
Let's get in. We've been talking 2 hours. Thank you. YouTube chat was in the 70s at one point today. If you enjoyed the conversations had today, make sure you hit the like, hit the subscription. It's free. We'll be going live every probably, let's say 2 times a week.
Yep.
Up into the draft. We'll sort that out and let you guys know. But we love doing the show. We love making you all a part of it. Thank you for the calls today. Thank you for all the comments, getting out our frustrations together. Let's do one last lottery sim on the way out and see where this story continues to go.
Right on. Let's pull it up. in 3, 2, 1. Holy hey. Your Winnipeg Jets are drafting number 1 overall. Ahead of the Vancouver Canucks, jumping up 6 spots, baby.
Winning the lottery is a mindset, folks. I need you all to think about every single bad night we've had together where we've been frustrated, and we got to leave this show with some excitement from jumping up in a fake simulation. We need to channel this collectively, manifest it. You simply hope and dream, and it's going to get you wins. Winning the lottery is a mindset, and we've prepared you folks for that mindset. Think about it until May 5th. We are almost there. Let's see what happens here.
Right on. Good night, everybody.
Good night.